Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge podcast. The Fatherhood Challenge is a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability of an environment and culture. We're going to encourage and challenge each other to step up and do courageous things that make our families and communities better places. So let's get to it. Greetings. Thank you so much for joining me. It's good to have you with me. Always good to have you with me. I have a really fun guest with me. His name is Matt Purdy. He's actually my neighbor. He lives just down the street from me. We just had some great times getting together. Our kids get together. And one of the things that stands out for me, and this is one of the reasons why I immediately thought of having him on the show, was specifically because of how engaged he is with his kids. I see it all the time. He's always doing fun things with them. We get our kids together, and it's just like a really, really fun party. It's fun for us. It's fun for the kids, and there's never a boring moment with it. So, Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's been nice having you guys as neighbors too. I'll tell you what, I guess I'm a dad of two, and I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, Marin and Anderson. So they keep me hopping, I'll tell you. And it's definitely one of those things that you never stop learning as a parent, for sure. And we get to live out here kind of on the farm with some livestock, and let the chickens and the ducks and the goats and all that stuff, let them run around and enjoy life. So it's been fun being out here.
Oh, I bet. I've always enjoyed anything to do with farms, exposing the kids to that and all that. It's just a great time. I always like to start with a dad joke or something kind of like that. So what is your favorite dad joke?
Okay. Well, often, since we are kind of out in the country, we usually have a pretty good garden throughout the year. And sometimes, depending on weeding, it's better than others on some years. But when we're picking out tomatoes throughout the summer, a lot of the time what I'll do is we get the cherry tomatoes and things like that. I'll look at one of the kids and I'll be like, "Hey, what's a dad tomato say to the baby tomato when he isn't walking fast enough?" And they'll look at me and they'll be like, "What?" And I drop a cherry tomato and I'll say, and step on it and say, "Catch up." And then they usually chuckle. So, of course, that turns into more and more of a conversation, and a continuation joke, as you use way too much ketchup as a dad, I mean, giving them, yeah. So it's kind of one of those things that, yeah, it comes back. But I think dad jokes just automatically flow by accident. Also, the older you get.
That's true too, and I don't know how that happens. It just kind of does.
Yes.
And yes, that's confirmed. Like we dads do use a lot of ketchup. I get hassled by my kids when we have some sort of a meal where you can, I don't know, you can almost put ketchup on almost anything. That's debatable too. But ketchup bottle
Right.
comes out, and I start putting ketchup on my food and whatnot, and then I'll get scolded by my youngest son for putting too much ketchup on.
Yeah, I'm usually not the one that's using it, but I'm definitely putting on the food for my children, and I'm usually teasing them. But yes, it's a staple for sure.
It absolutely is. Oh,
So.
I like to go back to where it all began and just where that experience of being a dad began. So, I mean specifically that experience when you found out you were going to be a dad for the first time. What was that like for you?
I guess I can't really remember the moment necessarily that Wendy told me we were gonna have a kid. Maybe I kind of remembered a little bit, but I definitely remember the moment that her water broke just before we went to the hospital. And that's kind of always a funny story and something that we deal with. So we were in Florida. We were having some weird issues here and there, and we're away from family. And it's funny because I think my wife even posted a couple of days before her water broke, something about the water pump being out and great. We don't have water. I can't shower, and I'm due in a week. Whatever. And she was just kind of being funny about it. And so, of course, right away, what did I do as a good husband? I called up someone who could come replace my water pump. Which in Florida, it's really only a 30-foot well, so I probably could have done it. But you're playing with 220, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just pay someone. So they came and they got it done, and it was pretty good. And so 2 days later, I get woken up at 1:30 in the morning. And because all I heard was, and I was sleeping, and she was pacing around, being a pregnant lady. And she said, Matt, my water broke. And I heard, Matt, the water broke. And I woke up in a rage. I woke up, are you kidding me? I can't believe that stupid water's broken again. I'm calling the company right now. What time is it? I don't care. I'm calling them. And it was like a private business type of situation. So I probably would have got a cell phone. But oh my gosh. And she's like, no, my water broke. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we can deal with that. So then we both jumped in the car and, took off and went to the hospital. And yeah, it's definitely the whole water breaking thing. It's a thing. If you puppy pads are a must, I think, pre-pregnancy or pre-birth. Just keep a few in the car with you. It will save your car seats. Just saying. Future dad tip.
That's wisdom from experience talking.
So beyond the car seat, and it's like the one other thing I'll say is that when you have that baby and you're in the hospital for a couple of days, and looking into that kid's eyes, trying to make sure it gets enough milk and everything else, you're trying to deal with that, and you got the whole mom emotions where she's like, can I feed my baby enough? Can I feed my baby enough? Oh my gosh, am I gonna fail? And you're trying to support her. And I remember after that couple of days, and we're leaving the hospital, and they just like cut off the little band that GPS locates your child, which basically slips off their foot anyway. Mm-hmm. And then I remember going to the elevator with my wife, and she like looks around, and we're walking out the elevator, and she's like, looks at me and goes, I guess we just get to take this thing home now. And it was kind of funny. We both kind of chuckled because it's like, yeah, I mean, there's that moment. I think there are continual moments as a parent that you have that are kind of like epiphanies. They're like, oh, yeah, this is it. It's all on us now. I mean, no one's gonna have conversations about what they'd recommend. You just deal with it, right? So
yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I still remember. I know exactly what you're talking about. I still remember that moment when my first son, when I took him home, and he's sitting there in his car seat, and we're driving home from the hospital, and I just see him there, and it's hard to put into words everything that you're feeling in that moment. It feels surreal, like you don't know whether this is real or not, because it's too good to be true. And then all of a sudden you're hit with this tidal wave of responsibility that is now on your shoulders,
right,
for pretty much for it changes, but it's now this is your responsibility for the rest of your life.
Right.
He's going to be involved in your life. You're going to be involved in his life. And
I
there's just
definitely drove home like a grandma that day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's if you haven't been through it, it's difficult. Even if you have been through it, it's really difficult to explain in words, but it's a really special moment.
Yeah, for sure.
We're going to change gears a little bit here, and
Yeah.
both of our kids have been brought up to really enjoy nature, and that has a root somewhere. So, I mean, I think at some point, you must have had some sort of a background with nature, of learning to appreciate it. Where did that start for you?
I did a lot of scouts when I was younger. I think that was probably the biggest thing. I mean, I don't know, even before that, I had a big backyard and, of course, grew up in the era that TV was a thing, but video games were kind of just starting. I mean, we had a Commodore 64 with some games, but it wasn't really like you'd sit there and play, Jumpman or Pitfall all day long. You get kind of bored with that after a while. So I
Hmm.
think it's a different era, but I definitely spent a lot of time outside with my friends, and we would be out, you know, if it was during the weekend, unless no one was around, we weren't in the house. We were all running around playing hide and seek, kick the can, and, working on tree forts and doing different stuff like that. But as I got older, it was a nice transition. My dad, he was a scout master, and I started getting into scouts. We started camping a lot and doing different stuff. And then eventually I ended up being an outdoor guide, through you and I. And I think that is one of those things that I learned the appreciation to. There's so many people I think that, I was able to bring into that world that for me, it's kind of nice to do the same thing, you know, now with my kids too. So, and it was just one of those things that being an outdoor guide, I mean, by the time I was 26, I had guided in all or been on trips myself, whether it was kayaking, backpacking, whitewater rafting, mountain biking, rock climbing, whatever. I'd been through all the U.S. states, minus Alaska and Hawaii, by the time I was 26, and just guiding in one capacity or another, or just taking trips myself. So, family trips or running around or whatever. So, or I'd live there, just because I kind of moved around when I was younger, a young adult, just to do that. And so that was a lot of fun.
Did that create some sort of an inspiration in you to want your kids to have some sort of an experience like that? Is that where it started?
You know, for sure, I think it's really my responsibility. I feel like to get them down that path and to share that love. Um, One of the things that I always heard people say as I was teaching them to enjoy the outdoors is they would frequently say, "Oh, I'm not really a camper." And I think that it's a really misused saying. And the thing about it is that it's not that people are not really campers. It's that they don't know how to camp comfortably. They don't know how to be outside comfortably. You have to understand or know how to keep yourself dry, how to keep yourself warm, how to keep yourself, away from the wind. And it's just those simple things, wearing the right clothes and simple things like being able to start a fire well, when you need one, at a campsite or whatever. There are many, many times which I was with a large group, and I'll tell you, everyone's wet and tired and no one wanted to start a fire. And there are definitely times when I'd built hundreds of fires, at that point from basically scratch, even with a flint, and I always had, when I was camping, I'd have a lint with me and steel wool and different tricks that I'd have for starting fires when it was wet. But I definitely had a couple of instances, probably a handful, that I can look back on and say, wow, it took me probably a good amount of time to get that fire going. But once you get it going and you get it roaring, and if it's wet and cold, and I can remember one time we were up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and with a group from the University of Connecticut. I was guiding up there, and everyone was pretty miserable. But once I got that fire good and roaring outside this lean-to, no one was really thinking about the fact it was a little bit windy, a little bit cold. Before you know it, we were having conversations you know, about the history of the area and about the fact we were getting ready to go over Mount Washington, and it has a lot of history with Thoreau and different things like that. So it was kind of fun. And I think that fires and comfortability, it's a big thing. People say they're not campers, but I think they just don't know how to camp. They
So
haven't been
your
taught.
kids are so your kids are picking up on this experience from actually doing these things with you.
Yeah, well, and that's the goal, is for me to be out as much as I can and teach them things, just being around me. And I try to, whenever I make fires and I do things and I teach them how I build a fire, how I set it up, how I light it, the whole deal. So you never know when you're going to need that skill. So
It's kind of interesting. We went on a camping trip, and my wife was off at the main office, and so I was with the kids, and we unpacked the tent out of the back, and we're setting it up. So it's just me and the boys, and we're setting up the tent together. It's up to us to get camp set up and everything, and we get this tent put up, and I walk them through the process of doing every little bit of that. Um, and we also did the tear down ourselves, and that was that. But I didn't know from that experience where that was going to go next. And of course, we get home, um, and I don't know if it was 1 or 2 days after we got back. Um, my wife was telling me to look in the back, and so I go and I look out in the backyard, and the boys are out in the backyard, and they have the tent almost completely set up themselves by themselves. And then the next thing you know, they're coming into the house informing us that they are going to be spending the night out in the backyard, and they're preparing camp.
that
And
is
so
great.
they got their food provisions and everything that they needed, all of their clothes to make sure that they were going to be warm and comfortable and all of this. And I'm just sitting there with this big grin on my face because I know where this is coming from. And I'm just soaking in this reward of that time spent with them, walking them through every step of how to do that, and then seeing them take off and try to practice this on their own. And they pulled it off successfully. Um,
That's awesome.
we didn't hear a peep out of them until the morning when we go to look out, and there's no tent there. They broke camp. They put the tent away properly the way it's supposed to go, and the tent was back in the garage, and there was no sign that they had camped at all. And
That's a win-win right there.
that was a huge moment of pride. And that kind of gets me into the next topic, which is on engagement. Do you think fathers nowadays are more or less engaged than they used to be?
It's funny. I think when you're talking about engagement, for me, the biggest thing is you have to be there and you have to let them see you do things. The biggest way you can be engaged is just to be around the kids. And after a long work day and hanging out, think it's easy to be like, hey, I'm going to go outside and work on a few things or whatever. Even I could be like, hey, I'm going to go outside and do some chores with the animals or whatever, feed the chickens, feed the ducks and the goats. And I wouldn't have to bring the kids. I don't have to, but a lot of the time I do bring them along. And even if I do all the work, they're still there and they're seeing it and they're watching me. And so they understand what it takes to take care of animals. They understand the work that's put in and they are there around me. And it's not that we're doing anything, groundbreaking. It's just, they're just around. And I think you have to, it's, if you look at a baby goat, say for instance, they don't know what to eat. They don't know how to deal with stuff at first, but they watch the other goats and they're like, oh, I should chew on that. Oh, okay, I'll chew on that. Oh, does it get some grain there? Oh, let me try that. Versus just going for its mom's teat. So I think that, kids are doing the same thing. If they don't understand and watch you and see how you're doing things and see how you interact, in public, at home, doing whatever activities, then it makes it hard for you to expect them to be able to deal with situations the right way, I think. So yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to the fact of like, if I feel, obviously I know dads here and there that I'm like, I wish we're a little bit more engaged here and there. And I look at other dads and I'm like, they're just killing it so hard. They're just doing great stuff. But who am I to judge? I think you have one of those things that as a dad, you kind of have to figure it out yourself, but I think you have to push yourself though. You have to do everything you can to be there. So
I agree with that. I mean, there's those moments when you're just tired, you're hurting, your body's hurting, and your kids are just just almost begging for your attention at that moment for you to do something with them, or just have a conversation or anything, and just reaching deep within yourself to look at them and see that need, and more importantly to see the opportunity at that moment. I don't know that there's ever been a time when um I made the decision to do something with them or to engage with them and regret it doing so. And somehow that
right.
ache or that tiredness that you were experiencing, sometimes you forget all about it after just having a good time with them, and you start feeling better yourself. It's just amazing how that works.
Yeah. And it always blows me away the core memories that kids pull from random situations that you have. Like, I don't know. I had a dad weekend this summer when my wife went away and hung out with some girlfriends, and I remembered it happened to be Boomtown or Towns Festival, and I wanted to go to a farm auction that was nearby, so we went there. My son was excited because he got a winter sled, and so
Mm.
it was kind of cool for him. But they just hung out and watched the auction, and I don't know if they'd ever been to a real auction like that. Maybe one other time they had been, but we did that, and they were talking about the auction and the fact they ate chicken gizzards for probably a week after it. And, we just kind of did our own thing all weekend, went to some fireworks and did some things that we might have done if their mom was around. We've done things slightly different in the past where we find maybe easier places to watch fireworks than when we went to. But it was fun because when you've just got your kids, you can do things exactly the way that you want. So I got to be honest, I kind of like it sometimes. Uh,
That quality time with them is so important. It's good to do things as a family, those are always important moments to do, trips, camping, and things like that. But there's also there's also a need that they have to do just one-on-one things with dad. That
Yeah.
time, that quality time is important too.
And one-on-one with mom, I think it's super important for both Wendy and I to have those one-on-one moments.
Yeah, it works the other way around too. And you can see it. That's also one of those things that's kind of difficult to articulate in words, but you can see the need and you can see the benefit from both sides when that quality time happens.
Yep, for sure. We don't do it as much as we should, but we try to do like one-on-one dates with the kids, every couple months where you take one out and then you take the other one out and kind of have that time. It's kind of fun.
Sometimes there are fathers out there that are sometimes trying to struggle to figure out how to engage, how to connect with their kids. And so it might seem like for some fathers it's easier for them to do that because they're just used to doing that. They've done that from the very beginning, but there may be some fathers out there that are struggling with how to engage with their kids or where to even start. And for them, this would be a new habit for them. How would you encourage them? How would you suggest that they start?
I think it's important to know, like, first off, they're your kids. There's nothing to be freaked out about or weird about. They don't even care like what you do with them. They don't want to be entertained. They just want to hang out with you. It's it's so funny. There was one of the one of the shows I've been watching lately was Ted Lasso, and there's a really funny part in the show this last season where he said he was talking about the same topic. He's like, the kids don't even care. They don't, because she's trying to. They're two kind of single parent esque type of situations there, and they're like, what am I supposed to do with this kid? He's like, he doesn't care. They don't care what you want to do as long as you involve them in your life. They just want to be involved. And he yells over at his daughter or his niece, and he says, hey, Phoebe, you want to go to my podiatrist appointment later? And she's like, oh yes, please. It's like, what a funny and yet very, very fitting way to talk about that, because like literally kids don't care what you do with them as long as you involve them.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. What is the funniest moment or experience that you've ever had with your kids?
Oh gosh, I don't even. It's so funny. I saw this question and I'm like, I don't even know where to start with it. But I guess I was going back to just. I think you always have those moments where your children say things that next thing you know, you're dying laughing for forever, and things will forever be changed. Whether or not they say the words to lyrics to a song incorrectly, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marriage used to have a song where it was a Taylor Swift song, and she used to sing something about cupcakes tiptoes, and so we used to always chuckle about her misquoting things. But the thing that I love about the memories that really stick in my head, which I think are hilarious, is there's sometimes, like, I took Marin mountain biking this summer, and we were up mountain biking on some tough trails and in Minnesota. But there's this one trail which is called bobsled, which is really flowy and weavy, and it's got huge berms, and it's all downhill, and it's super fun, and you can go back and forth on it and really let the bike go. And she worked really hard to get there. And there's a moment where I took a picture of her, and it looked like she was about ready to go into heat exhaustion, because I don't think she'd ridden her bike enough that year beforehand. But when we got back after she rode that chunk and she did some other riding with me, of course, that's all she could talk about and how excited she was. And she was telling random waiters at the store, of course, about her biking experience and, at a restaurant and different stuff and which routes she did. And it's funny because they have that internal pride and that sense of accomplishment, and just really that excitement to be out with you more than anything. Like, you might think it's about them, but I think it's really more about them being with you and doing it together. At least that's what it is for Marin, for sure. And I think that it's just one of those things that those are the moments that always stick, I think, with them, and then make me chuckle down the road, because I think their perspective of things sometimes can be less sunny on our side than it is on theirs.
I like how she was so proud of herself that she was going around telling everybody. I think that is so cool.
Yeah. And of course at the time, oh my gosh, there was one moment where she stopped her bike because she was just tired. And of course I had clip-in pedals, and there was a lady behind me who was coming up, and I couldn't stop my bike, and I had my feet clipped in, and I started to fall. And I was hoping that Marin, because both of her feet were down, she could hold me just for a second to where I could just balance myself and not fall over. Instead of doing that, I proceeded to push my 10-year-old down on the ground, and then my bike and me, we both fell on top of each other downhill, going down this, and this lady's riding by on her bike. She's like, "Oh, that was great, pushing your daughter down." And I'm like, "Thanks a lot, lady. Thanks a lot."
I like how she makes you the bad guy.
I know. I was like, yeah, I didn't mean to do it, but it happens. It happens.
Oh, she will always remember that the rest of her life.
Yes, yeah, she will.
As we wrap up here, if you could look one dad or any dad in the face and give him a challenge, what would that challenge be?
You've just got to really try, so like try to connect with them all the time and be a part of them. It doesn't really matter, again, what you're doing, but I think that I ask my kids a lot. I'm like, "Hey, how was your day? Did anything make you happy? Did anything make you sad?" Type of situation. My wife does the same thing. And it's kind of interesting, the questions, the responses you'll get from them. So if I were to say, try something, hey, ask your kids about their day. It's crazy what you'll learn. Ask them what made them happy today. Ask them what made them sad. Ask them if anything made them frustrated, and see what they reply to, because you'll learn a lot about your kids where they might not normally tell you things.
That is such a little thing to do, is just to, number one, to try, and number two, asking them questions about their day. Such a simple thing to do, but opens up so many conversations. It's like, if you just start it and just try, a lot of times they take it from there.
Yeah, you just got to give them an avenue to talk, I think.
Very, very important. Matt, we've reached the end of our time, but it
was great chatting with you.
Nothing
as always.
Short of fun. I've enjoyed this time with you, and I really appreciate you being here and talking with me and sharing your experiences and your wisdom and your stories. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jonathan. I appreciate you.
And thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode. If you enjoyed the show and are getting value out of it, there are 2 ways you can support this podcast. One is by hitting the follow option on your favorite listening app. This will make it easier to see all the episodes and receive notifications when a new episode is released. The other is by checking out some of the swag in our store. They make great gifts for the holiday, a birthday, or any reason, and they help spread the word about this great movement. The link to the store is in the show description below. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next episode.